So, you've read the title. Playable Elites are simultaneously one of modern Halo's most requested and yet somehow most neglected features. But it's time for that to change. From Halo 2 onwards, they became a staple of Halo multiplayer, a core piece of the Michelin-starred player expression menu that Halo served up. They offered such a great twist on customization, a uniquely Halo method of player expression that was just another thing that set Halo apart from other games. But then, when 343 took over, they just vanished into thin air. That was the worst finger click I've ever done. The Halo trilogy set the Elites up as a core part of the Halo universe, both in the campaign and the multiplayer. Halo had evolved into a universe that was about far more than just humans. But nowadays, it kind of feels like none of that ever happened. Besides a tiny section in Halo 5, Elites have been entirely absent as allies from all of 343's Halo stories, and besides Halo 2 Anniversary, they've been entirely absent from the multiplayer as well. But the time has come for that to change. Elites are one of Halo's most important and most unique elements. They're the salt to Spartan's pepper, if you will, and their removal has had such a huge negative impact on not just multiplayer, but also the stories that Halo tells as well. So today, we need to talk about why 343 bringing back Playable Elites is so crucially important, not just for multiplayer, but for campaign as well. Playable Elites may have vanished from Halo over 13 years ago now, but demand for them certainly hasn't vanished. You know, there's that saying that you never truly know how much you love something until it's gone, and I think it's safe to say that applies here. Before 343 shut down the Halo Waypoint forums, long may they rest in peace, there was this notorious thread that was dedicated to people asking for Playable Elites to return. And this thread, right, which was started in like 2013 or 2014, so the better part of a decade ago, was active right up until the end of the forums in 2022, I think. And my god, I swear to god, it had racked up like 30,000 pages of comments. Absolutely insane levels of demand. If you honestly don't think that there's demand there for Playable Elites to return, then I don't know what to tell you. Now, you're probably wondering why there's so much talk about Playable Elites at the moment, because Remy made a video a few weeks about them, and obviously I'm making one now, so what's going on? Has something happened pertaining to them?
You serious?
Well, there's a rumor going around that 343 are going to be adding a playable UNSC robot core in a future Infinite update. And so this, combined also with their constant dismissal of Playable Elites, has people rightfully saying, why are you adding a robot core when Elites are a long staple of Halo that so many people have wanted back for over a decade? And you know, that's a very good question to ask. Playable Elites in Halo Infinite would, for lack of a better word, go so incredibly hard. The potential of Elite customization has barely even had its surface scratched. There's so much badass Elite armor that would be honestly amazing to not just unlock and customize, but to mix and match as well. If I had to name a select few, there's the Honor Guard, the Ranger, Arbiter, the Counselor armor, Zaitan's armor, Rogue Baratami's armor, Jaeger's armor, and probably a ton more that I can't think of right now. And you know, that's not even including the armors that we could unlock and customize in Halo 3 and Halo Reach as well. Infinite's Elites look absolutely incredible as well, both their armor designs and just their overall design. An amazing, well-needed return to form. Honestly, I could have foregone Playable Elites in Halo 4 and Halo 5 because of, frankly, just how awful the Elites looked in those games, but when the Elites look as good as they do in Halo Infinite, it is a crying shame that they exist as nothing more than to be shot at. Playable Elites in Halo Infinite with the exact same customization options as Spartans would be like every Elite preferred species' dream come true. As would my incredibly iconic line of Flood-themed PCs, made in partnership with Apex Gaming PCs. From the Pure Form to the Gravemind and the ultra-powerful Primordial build, we've created 3 PCs so powerful, they could probably 1v1 Mendicant Bias and Offensive Bias at the same time, and win quite convincingly. So if that sounds juicy to you, then hit the link in the description and make sure to use code HIDDEN at checkout for up to $250 off your order. Elites offer an unparalleled and unique style of player expression that has been sorely missing for 13 years now, and if 343 are interested in doing non-Spartan cores in the future, I mean, it kind of goes without saying that Elites should be priority number one, nothing else. You know, it's quite ironic. I think Playable Elites are actually the best example of how armor cores should have been implemented. Not as an artificial barrier between mixing and matching certain pieces of armor that very clearly actually do work together, but rather as a way of adding different kinds of playable characters, Spartans, Elites, and beyond. You know, Playable Elites always kind of felt like the tip of the playable species iceberg to me. There was so much potential with going beyond just Elites as an alternative playable species that Bungie never really tapped into, and that, coincidentally, the core system seems almost perfect for. But I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. As much as I would absolutely love Halo to have a mode that's almost like Battlefield, some massive scale human versus Covenant war where when you're playing as the Covenant, you can play as Elites and Brutes and Grunts and Hunters, Jackals, Drones, etc. As insanely cool as that sounds, and as much as I kind of can't believe that has never happened, we need to actually get Playable Elites back first before we start looking at other species being playable, but yeah, fingers crossed at some point in the future. Now, as much as we all love and miss Playable Elites, I want this video to be as objective as possible, so I've got a caveat with saying that they were by no means a perfect feature. Each respective iteration had its own pros and cons. Halo 2's Elites were hands down the most balanced, but also had the least amount of customization. Halo 3's Elites had by far the most customization, but were the least balanced, and Halo Reachers were somewhere in the middle. Not quite as balanced as Halo 2's, but also not quite as customizable as Halo 3's. Balance has always been the main, and honestly, the only problem with Playable Elites that I can think of. Elites aren't the same shape or size as Spartans, and so their hitboxes are inherently different in their size and shape as well, which is a pretty big deal when it comes to balance. But you know what? I actually think this is a very simple problem to fix. Just force the same species for ranked. I honestly think it is that easy. Social playlists shouldn't focus on balance. Part of the fun of social modes is the chaos of them and how they let the sandbox go truly wild without restriction. Whereas ranked, on the other hand, is the home of balance. It's where people go to hone their skills and to improve as players, which requires a pretty decently balanced experience to be consistent, reliable, and above all else, fair. This is the problem that Halo 3 had. If you played as an Elite in Ranked, the differing hitbox made it almost impossible for you to be headshot from behind, which, you know, is a pretty serious problem when you consider that most ranked sandboxes rely entirely on precision weapons and headshots. So, the answer? I think you just ban Elites from Ranked. Let the dinos run wild in social modes, where balance isn't anywhere near as important, but force everybody to play as a Spartan in Ranked so there's consistency. This pretty much entirely solves Halo 3's balancing problems, and even opens up the possibility of some unique rotational ranked modes as well. Like, imagine if 343 decided to add Ranked Elite Slayer to Halo Infinite to see who the best Elite in the world was, or something like that, where you go into Ranked and instead of being forced to play as a Spartan, everybody in that playlist is forced to play as an Elite. The bottom line is that if 343 are going to be adding in non-Spartan armor cores, then there's no logical reason why Playable Elites can't be added back. And even if not, even if this rumor is just complete bullshit, then there's still no logical reason why Playable Elites cannot and should not return. It has been far, far too long. But 343's problem with Playable Elites extends beyond just them being playable and also their presence in multiplayer. I don't think it's any coincidence that as support for Playable Elites started to dwindle, so too did the Elite's relevance in the story. Having Elites in multiplayer is almost emblematic of how you treat the Elites as a core part of Halo, how relevant you think they should be. There's absolutely no reason for elites to exist in Halo's multiplayer, but by putting them there, you show how highly you value them as a core part of the Halo experience, which of course extends to the story and campaign as well. Since Halo 4, elites have played a consistently reducing role in Halo's narrative, and a majority of the depth that Halo 3, but most importantly Halo 2, gave them as a species, and also now an allied faction, has vanished. They've basically just reverted back to being one of the bad guys. Of course, there are exceptions, but their role in Halo 5 was minor at best, and as cool as the elite bosses, in particular Jaeger, was in Infinite, they still had very little presence compared to the original trilogy, and literally no presence whatsoever when it came to being allies. Ever since Halo 4's canon multiplayer, which was coincidentally the first Halo since Halo 1 with no playable elites, they've been hyper-focused on this Spartan story bullshit.
This is a Master Chief story and a Spartan story, especially in multiplayer. We want to make sure that we focus on how Spartans battle against each other.
Pushing everything else to the side and only focusing on the Spartans, which is the absolute opposite direction that we thought Halo's story was going to go in after Halo 3. The books, however, tell a completely different story. You know, I always assumed that after Halo 3, the elites would be front and center alongside the UNSC in future Halo stories. And in the books, they kind of are. Kilo 5, Hunters in the Dark, Shadow of Intent, Broken Circle, Silent Storm, Oblivion, Outcast, just a few of the 343 era books where elites take center stage or have a role on the same level of what they had in Halo 2 and Halo 3. But in the games, it's just UNSC, 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 UNSC. Our forced alliance on the brink of doom with a species that were once our mortal enemy, who were responsible for the slaughter of billions of us, is one of Halo's coolest plot threads, and it is a crying shame that no main story since has dedicated itself to fleshing out that plot thread like the books have. Having stories only focus on the UNSC is starting to get really stale. It certainly doesn't help that even the UNSC have nowhere near the variety that they once did, thanks to the overall reduction in Marine presence over the years, and also the total lack of any and all ODSTs since 2010, which is insane. But even with that in mind, there is more to Halo than just the UNSC. You know, at this point, it's actually kind of funny because 343's like UNSC tunnel vision goes beyond even the games. It's visible in the merch. Last year, Late Night Gaming made a really funny video where it's him talking about the merch and just how all of Halo merch is basically just the same thing, just like t-shirts with Master Chief on it, or t-shirts that are like olive drab with 117 or the UNSC logo on them or something. Even in the merch, this kind of UNSC tunnel vision is so prevalent. Making Halo nothing but a Spartan story is an incredibly boring and incredibly reductive way to treat Halo that excludes an infinite wealth of potential stories that you could only tell with elites. We've spent God knows how long at this point on the channel talking about Halo spin-off games that need to be made and that have never been made. But you know what? It is mind-blowingly, bafflingly, utterly insane to me that the Arbiter has existed as a character for 19 years now, almost 2 decades, and never once has there been a spin-off game focused on him. But elite presence isn't important just for spin-offs. I mean, could you imagine how much less interesting Halo 2 and Halo 3 would have been without elites? I mean, how much more generic would the overall trilogy story have been if the entire thing was just UNSC versus Covenant the entire time? There was no elite human alliance, no Arbiter and Johnson interactions.
How you doing?
It was just humans versus aliens the entire time, and that was the end of it. Conversely, can you imagine how much cooler Infinite story would have been if the Arbiter was one of the survivors who you linked up with? Or if you could find pockets of Swords of Sanghelios honor guards that were scattered across Zeta Halo trying to find the Arbiter? Hell, there were literally meant to be elites on the Infinity, so it's not even like it wouldn't line up with the canon. But I think you get the point. In fact, I think it's a point that honestly doesn't even need to be made, because I think we're all on the same page regarding elites and kind of have been for the last decade. This video should be moot. This video should be pointless, but it's not. The Elites are one of Halo's most unique elements. The stories that you can tell with the inclusion of Elites are unlike anything you can tell in any other franchise. They add a level of variety that Halo's story is drastically lacking. Our alliance with them is a plot thread that should have been expanded on post-Halo 3, not forgotten about, and it's time for that to change. Not only do Playable Elites need to come back to the multiplayer, but Elites in general need to become a core part of Halo's narrative again. Not just another target to shoot, but as a story component, as a main piece of the puzzle that is Halo's ongoing narrative. Because without them, it feels like a key ingredient of the Halo meal is missing. Halo without Elites in the leading role is like a brisket without rub, right? You might smoke it perfectly, and yeah, the meat may be great quality, but with every bite that you take, you have that feeling in the back of your head that there's something missing to complete the flavor. So, do you want to see Playable Elites return? Honestly, I don't even know why I'm asking that question, because I know what you guys are going to say, I know what all of your answers are, but make sure you leave your thoughts down below in the comments anyway. My friends, this upcoming weekend, October 12th to 15th, I think, I'm going to be at the Halo World Championship in Seattle, so, you know, if you happen to be there, and you happen to see me, then make sure you come and say hi. I want to try and meet as many of you guys as possible. I met so many of you last year, and it's honestly just such an amazing experience, so, you know, if you see me, make sure you say hi. So, with that said, let's round this one out here. I want to give a massive thank you to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support over there, as per usual. And thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I'll catch you all in the next one.